Firstly, to reiterate what I just said, thank you to Thomas for setting me up so nicely with the content that he's just covered. As kind of hopefully with the last presentation today, we'll kind of bring together an awful lot of what you've heard and kind of examine how with times changing so quickly, so much demand on agents, so much demand on kind of how do we keep up with the data that is coming in, the 24/7 kind of expectations of people. And again, going back to Thomas's Gen Z, it's their continual demand to be able to engage on their terms. But what does that actually mean for a business? So obviously we're there, we want to achieve that happy customer who's doing what they want, when they want to do it, they're interacting with us, they're getting their answers back, kind of where they can, hopefully they're doing it themselves. But how does that affect your agents? Are you delivering that 5-star experience? So without the focus on how the data and the communication kind of flows into your organization, how are you able to deliver that kind of that service that you want, that outcome, that first contact resolution, that happy customer who's going to tell others how to work with you and to go and to buy your products, to utilize your services. Now, transformation and change, whether that's digital transformation, customer experience, it's not necessarily about changing your CRM, shiny front ends, portals, but it's looking actually more granular at that flow of data and how that goes around your organization. How are those processes that you've put in, which you believe will deliver that service, being technically enforced? Or is it down to someone making that choice? Is it down to someone kind of potentially taking data from somewhere and re-uploading it somewhere else, to copying and pasting? The most common failure, kind of which leads not only to that poor customer experience, but also that poor agent experience, are when there's disparate back-end solutions, where the design of the process done by kind of the higher echelons of an organization don't actually reflect what the reality of those who are implementing it. Do we know that Mark in the contact center at the end of each day downloads a spreadsheet and re-uploads it into another system? And because it works, because the report that comes back shows that something has happened, it's not until Mark or whoever goes away on holiday or leaves, it's that suddenly breaks down. So what we're doing there is we're taking everything in, but we can't then affect a change. And that then leads us to the customer-led versus customer-focused challenge that organizations have. And kind of, does customer-focused change and innovation actually enable you to really deliver that service? So what is customer-led? So organizations that are customer-led will take their customers' feedback and actually kind of change and manipulate their services, utilizing that and truly delivering that, which means that actually they become customization orientated. And this can then lead to multiple paths, kind of systems not talking to each other and not being able to deliver that experience, because actually you haven't got that one port of call. So then you start to go, well actually kind of, I want to deliver that because I obviously want to deliver what my customers want and what they are demanding of me. But then, so let's look at the customer focused outcome. So kind of customer focus is more around the opportunity to probe deeper, to understand the customer need, not necessarily the want, but actually what is the need, because the need will give you the outcomes that they want to achieve. When you're looking at how to develop kind of how you are interacting with your organization and the systems that you're using, look and address that need or the why. Kind of continue to question and kind of without trying to solutionize. So kind of this is how we're going to make that change. This is what we need to do. Actually, you nullify an awful lot of the information that you've got to be able to deliver on that need or kind of to answer that why question. Kind of, you need to look at kind of a way to address those needs, and that only ends up delivering a positive result for your organization. So you're not necessarily giving the customer what they want, you are giving them what they need. And then what you can deal with is what comes in. So actually, you're starting to look at how you control what comes in and how you are able to deliver that service. So there's two examples. And I go back and I was listening to a podcast called Sneakonomics on the BBC, and it looked at how in the 80s Reebok overtook Nike, and that kind of Nike were becoming customer led. So it was, we deliver running shoes, we deliver kind of shoes mainly targeted at men because no one really kind of does any other exercise. And then you had aerobics come in, and kind of there was kind of people were talking about different shoes, but Reebok looked at the need. What is the difference between an aerobic shoe and a running shoe? Actually, what is the customers looking to do? So suddenly they started to kind of go out there and kind of work with those leaders. So in fact, they actually worked with Jane Fonda. If you see on her first video, she had no shoes on. Any subsequent video that she produced, she had Reebok shoes on. What they had done is they'd become customer focused. They'd been listening to what the need was out in the market, and that took them from fourth or fifth to suddenly they were outstripping Nike in sales. And the other example is the iPod. So this kind of iPod wasn't about kind of being led by the customer. It was about looking at how can we kind of improve and focus on what people's needs are. People don't want to be carrying around 15 CDs in a case, and when they do any exercise, it jumps, or they're stuck in the 80s with the tape. How can we deliver that kind of that need that's growing for multiple songs to be able to be played? So customers weren't saying, I want to carry around a very small hard drive. Apple were looking at, actually, that is the best solution for how we can deliver that service. So then let's go back, and again, as Thomas and a number have mentioned, at one of the most important kind of areas of this change, and that's the agent. So what do your agents see? Are they getting in kind of that ever increasing power of data? Kind of, it's confusing. The kind of it keeps coming, it keeps flowing. Back office system here, new area there. Kind of, it keeps building and flowing and kind of working across many sectors. That's what we see. Is that overrun and overarching of data, kind of not enabling someone to be productive. So then we need to breathe and have a look at why that is happening. So I'm working across all sectors: travel, public sector, insurance. And the big thing that we're getting is that agents are saying it's too much data, there are too many systems, there's too many kind of transactional activities that I need to deliver. And that's what slows me down. That means I can't be productive. And that means at the end of the day, they're not that happy. And kind of that is where an unhappy kind of agent, it's very hard to deliver that 5-star service. So kind of how do we start to look at that kind of overbearing, confusing and kind of demoralizing aspect of loads of data? So as an organization, have you gone back? Have you asked your teams how they feel? Have you asked your teams how they cope with this? Have you talked to them about the systems that you've implemented and if they work? And if you don't know those answers to those questions, then it's likely that actually you are missing areas that can be improved, that you can take it back, that you can enable that agent to make that breath and actually deliver that value that they want. Are they copying and pasting from one system to another, having to add communications to back office CRMs? Are they having to, and this is one of the most common ones that we see, continually go back to the customer for more information? So then what you're getting is this whole kind of, as Jonathan said in his presentation earlier, this whole tsunami of communication, because not only am I getting kind of all the emails that I've got over the weekend on a Monday, I'm then having to go back to those emails for more information and answer the emails I get on Monday, or answer the phone calls, or answer the WhatsApp messages or the social media messages, because I can't actually resolve that contact when it comes into me. So then no matter what the channel that is coming in, you need to then look at that customer journey and how that customer journey is controlled to enable you and your agents to deliver. So now, kind of having looked at that, let's open that can of worms of everything coming towards you, a bit like when you go into hyperspace in Star Wars or Star Trek, when everything's coming at you. Kind of how can we then now compartmentalize that change so that you can actually remove that overbearingness? You can start to kind of actually enable your agents to add value and to deliver. So what we're now starting to do is to take that need, to take that why, and start to go, what are some simple aspects that start to allow us to remove what I would call that white noise. So kind of, I'll take emails as an example. Are you getting hundreds of emails in? You can't answer them all, and actually you realise that you've got your spam coming in. You've got your updates from back office systems coming in, and you've got an awful lot of communication that's actually going through to the contact center that doesn't need to be. So suddenly you're going, oh, hang on a minute. Like if we get 500 emails a day, and we can now remove 100 of them because they're not worth it, then suddenly you're making it easier, because that's 20% you've started to remove and get rid of. And okay, then, well, and then you start to kind of look at free text, and kind of, if you look at the digital channels, free text is one of the hardest things to deal with, because it inevitably, if I can say the word properly, actually forces you to have to create at least one more communication back to the customer to ask them another question. And kind of, again, all these channels kind of there. As your organization, are you being run based on the channel, social media, marketing, phone calls going to the contact center, web chat goes into the contact center, email goes to everyone? Or actually, are you starting to look at how can you go based on content? So now what you're doing is going, well, okay, I can start to validate what's coming in, because we've got tools that can look at the content of the email and start to route it where it needs to go. Does it need to go to an agent? You can start to design that journey. So we've had IVRs in phones for years. Well, there's no reasoning why that can't be done across all your channels. And again, 5-9s are talking about their IVA. Well, yes, that's great across the phone, but why not deliver exactly the same experience? Why not use that design thinking to make sure that actually it doesn't matter whether someone's had a face-to-face conversation, it's coming on Facebook Messenger, it's a WhatsApp, it's an email, we're still giving that same journey, that same experience, and we're technically enforcing what we want to happen. So then we build on that and we start to go, well, okay, that's well and good, but that's still siloed. It's still coming in and it's having to go to an agent. I may have automated a response back or automated the data collection from someone, but it still needs to go to an agent to do something. And that's where you then go, well, kind of actually another aspect to avoid failure, to help to remove that chance of human error, is looking at how you integrate and automate. And again, automation is not about removing an agent. It's not about shrinking your workforce. It's about enabling you to grow. It's about kind of the removal of transactional tasks to make someone happier. It's about enabling someone to be more productive. And it means that actually you can grow as an organization and your people can grow with you, and you're not having to continually kind of fight against that recruitment and loss aspect of your kind of most valuable tool. So then we go through to kind of, okay, then, well, how do we then look at kind of removing that human error? Well, if you've updated a system, you've stopped that copy and paste. If you've kind of alerting an agent, and actually the message that comes through, they can deliver and they can resolve that first contact. And then you can focus on an agent being able to add value, be productive. If by adding these tools in, don't look at it as a whole, but you start to break it down and you start to say, well, actually, if we take out 20% of the digital communication that's coming into the contact center, maybe that's 5 minutes an agent per hour. Maybe that's 10 minutes an agent per hour. But that's very quickly. That 10 minutes an agent per hour is 80 minutes throughout a day. So in theory, they're able to answer another 10, 12 contacts. But then if you look at that across a team of 10, that's 800 minutes you've saved in a day. And that's 4,000 minutes you've saved in a week. So it soon builds up. You have to start looking at those marginal gains. If you go back to kind of one of the most famous marginal gains is David Brailsford with the GB cycling, who worked out if you go into a corner on the cycle in the velodrome 1% faster, you come out 3% faster. And that is what we're talking about. And that's where we're delivering with the tools that we've got, is enabling companies to self-serve that marginal gains by using intuitive tools that enable you to build and adapt to how that customer journey might be. So a few takeaways. One, be customer focused and not customer led. That customer led can lead you really into that labyrinth that becomes tricky to get out of. Two, digital change and customer experience change does not have to be IT led. I hold my hats off to the IT teams. They are keeping organizations afloat, especially as more and more is coming. You're getting more security attacks and all of those bits. They're doing that. Actually, look at the tools where those at the front end can make that change and deliver that change, because kind of as we're trying to do by deliver tools that are enabling you to self-serve, as organizations, you need to look at who should be making those changes, because who truly knows about the customer journey and what they are seeing. Identify what your goal is. Look at the outcomes. Look at the outcomes, look at the need, look at the why. Don't be system-led. You don't have to pigeonhole yourself because kind of your CRM says it has to be done this way. Being able to integrate now means that actually you can start to improve what your CRM can do, because you are able to kind of deliver and start to take out and input information into that system. And number 4, which I think kind of, as everyone knows, is create the right culture. That is key within any organisation, and by starting to look at whether it's kind of dynamically routing a communication that's coming in, whether that's looking at content rather than channel, actually they are all helping to remove those silos. And if we go back to again kind of that gamification aspect, kind of the contact center team might be there, but also you need to look at, especially with disparate workforces, how are they able to have that conversation with finance that they would normally knock on the door or pop into another room? How they are able to kind of have those conversations with other colleagues that help them do those jobs. So when you're looking at that change, look at how you can not only build that kind of customer service team, but also how they interact with others. So that is me done.
Thank you, Gil. Very, very interesting. A lot of food for thought in there, and I think very much underlines the importance of looking at the outcome, taking a problem-solving approach. I think we're going to talk through some examples shortly. Our fireside chats. No cigar and port, I'm afraid, but maybe we'll grab a beer after. I do think what we've seen is it underlines the importance of taking an iterative approach as well, where we're looking at the outcome, we're looking at the problem, and we start on this journey working with customers. And we solve the first problem, we prove the benefit, we get going, and we keep going, right? And it's about how do we support the transformation and change for our customers. So I think, really clear. I think there's a lot of great case studies that we've got. I touched on a few, very high-level examples earlier on, and I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points with you and get your insight, Gil, with you going over the last couple of years working with us, working with the team and customers. So the first the point is that there has been, and you've talked about it as well, the significant upswing in the volume of emails, which can overwhelm customer service operations. What's been your experience, your real world experience of this working with customers?
I absolutely right, and I think it's across all sectors. I think email and digital is becoming the go-to way of communicating. That jump has obviously coincided with lockdown, and there were organisations that we work with who turned their phones off because they weren't able to manage that. So suddenly, kind of, people are being slightly forced down that route in some ways, which means that kind of you need to then look at how you can change your model maybe of communication to be able to cope with that switch in demand.
Okay, thank you. And if you could maybe reference, think of one customer, specific customer scenario, or reference, some examples. But what impact was this growth of email having in a customer environment? What was the impact of this?
So we were working with a housing organisation, and basically they challenged us with that they were getting more kind of emails and digital communications in than actually they could physically respond to. And so kind of what that happens is that has numerous knock-on effects. One, because you're not answering something, you get more in. So it kind of compounds the problem. It also has a real kind of disheartening and lowering of morale of the agents, because you're fighting a losing battle. So you continuously, although you're trying hard, and that means that your productivity goes down, because there's a little bit of, well, it doesn't matter whether I answer 15 emails this hour or whether I answer 50 emails this hour or day, because kind of I'm never going to be able to catch up and have that effect, which then means that you get even more emails coming in, and then your complaints start to increase. And I think that's the key problem, and that isn't just kind of focused on them as a housing association. We're doing that with travel companies, seeing that exact same scenario with travel companies, with insurance companies, that kind of, it's a different way of being able to answer a customer query, and tends to actually take longer.
So we talk about problem solving, and there's one example of the growth of email and the impact it's having. So how do you work with the team, within Britannic and customers to understand the actual problems that we need to solve? How do you validate what those issues are?
I think kind of some of those is getting to the crux of it. Really kind of speaking to those who are at the front end. So we understood what, as an organisation, the outcomes that they wanted to achieve. They wanted to lower complaints. They wanted a faster turnaround, and they wanted to reduce average handling time. And actually, I'll come on to that later, because that's an interesting one, because it's how do you kind of quantify that. And then we actually looked at the complexity of their current setup. So they were using contact center solution kind of initially, and they had streams and streams and a vast spreadsheet of how the flow worked. And kind of I struggled with it, they struggled with it, and no one was quite sure how to do it. So what we then did is, okay, let's break it down. Pick a journey. So we looked at repairs, and we started there. We broke it down. And the most important thing we did was, what information do you need to be able to resolve the query? And that's where we started. And then we could start to look at the journey kind of from there. And a lot of my role is just being that petulant child and asking them why. Why are they doing that? Why do they want to do that? And I think that's the big one, because people are very quick in wanting to recreate what they already do and then look at changing. And actually, that can nullify and in some cases stop any change that happens.
I think that there's an important point to pick out of that, which is it's moving down the layers, isn't it, from the theory and the art of the possible to actually making it real, picking a journey, understanding it, looking at where those problems are, and working out together, getting the data, working out together how we solve the problems. What does good look like, and actually how do we design it using the design thinking approach you talked about before? How do we look at the process? How do we map it? How do we recreate a more efficient technology-enabled process to deliver the outcomes that people want? So
you're right, and I think what is interesting is when you're in it, it's very hard to do it. And I think that the experience that we've had, and this, Roger, people are shocked actually at how simple you can make it. And that I think is the key takeaway, is simplicity wins. Build from that, but start simple.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, if you think about it, that's really important when it comes to getting buy-in across an organization. I know we've been involved in lots of projects over the last couple of years, right? And lots of transformation projects, and of course, given the nature of the sort of solutions that we're delivering today, these touch so many different areas of the business, so many different stakeholders, and we need to be part of that team, actually talking about the benefits, helping to communicate in the appropriate language to the different stakeholders to make these things real, to give that tangible outcome and benefit that's going to be delivered. So I think that's one of the takeaways I've got. And how would you say you and the team work with customers to successfully introduce a new solution? Any thoughts or tips?
It goes back to kind of any project delivery is teamwork, and actually we try and put ourselves kind of in with them in a way, because it's kind of, they know their organisation best. They know what they want to achieve, and kind of it's for us to up to us to look at that kind of how, because we've got the experience of multiple tools. We've got the experience of actually using the tools. So to them, it's teasing out that kind of, if you make that change, what's the other knock-on effect? Does that affect other parts of your organization? And kind of a lot of the tools we use are that self-serve. We don't want people ringing us up to say, kind of, I want to make a little change. Can you do it? Yes, it'll be done in 48 hours time. Actually, it's growing that confidence. It's building the tool and building solution with the individuals who are going to take control of that. Because again, that means that something happens like that, they can change that customer journey. They get the data back, which means that a particular journey isn't working. They go in, it takes 5 minutes for them to recreate it, and they press enter, and that journey is changed. So that's where we're moving to. It's not like these big CRM projects which take kind of 6 months worth of planning, 18 months worth of delivery, and then it's old and never really gets out of beta. These are, as we're saying, that continuous improvement, that continuous development of a tool to enable you to hit that kind of 5-star customer service that you want.
Yeah, and I think, again, back in the day, right, when we were CRM was a new concept, 20 plus years ago, and certainly what I saw was the challenge around being able to put the control in the hands of the business to make the changes. That what you ended up with is, if it was too complicated, too expensive to change the system, you ended up with the requirements changing, but the technology remaining flat and a gap appearing, and of course that's when you impact the service, you impact the operation, and people start making decisions that the technology isn't fit for purpose. So being able to guide and support customers to make their own changes. I talked before about the customer who with access to the tool were able to create 19 rules themselves, right? And I think, how has this been embraced? How easy has it been for customers to be able to build those rules, and what's your experience been of how people have really taken it forward and the benefit they've achieved as a result?
That's an interesting one, and there are differences. It depends on what that problem is. We work with one customer, and theirs is all about answering FAQs, but they were going to have a lot of communication, and so kind of within a week we'd set it up. A couple of weeks in, we'd tweaked it. By week 3, 4, we were at kind of 80 to 90% deflection away from the contact center. You've got others that kind of working with an insurance company, and again, they're getting a lot of emails in that aren't necessary to go into that contact center. And I think at the last count, they're just under 68% of emails were now no longer going into that contact center. And if you think of it as 5 minutes an email, they get 300-400 emails a day. Actually, now they're only getting about 100, just under 100 emails a day. So that's where the impact can come. And I think one of the key things that they've all noticed is kind of being able to very quickly kind of remove that free text email or communication that is coming in, because that is the time sucker. And kind of with the housing association, it now, again, keep it simple. It comes in, they get a form back, they fill that form in, that comes in. They've now got all of their information that they need to be able to resolve that, and their resolution has gone from it was about 9 to 12 contacts per resolution. So their average handling time was 9 minutes, and it was 9 to 12. They're now down to 2 or 3. Average handling time has gone up to 12 minutes, but it's 2 or 3. So they're saving about an hour per customer. So you can see the impact that you have. If you control that journey at the start, you can have a major impact across your organization.
So it's fair to say they've used the tool to understand, redesign, and improve the journey for the benefit of all.
Yeah. And the housing association we do with are now using it to technically enforce the journey they want their staff to use when contacting them. Because again, they realise that actually some of their issue wasn't the customers and users. Actually, it was the internal kind of volume of emails that were going back and forward that was really impacting the service that they could deliver the end user.
Okay, and no, interesting. And there's been a lot of talk about contact center, but presumably this technology can be used outside of the contact center.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, so we work with a travel company, and uh, they have a lot of schedule changes that come in from the airlines. They've got two projects. One is about schedule changes. So quite often it might just be the change of an aircraft. So actually, none of the details of the flight times or anything change, but someone still has to look at that email to make sure that that is the case. So what we've done is we take that email in, we kind of use a parsing system to take that, we package that up. That data is then sent to their booking system, and it has a look, and it goes, yes, this one is fine. We can handle it from within the booking system. No, hang on, we're outside the parameters. So that comes back in. And so agents now only have to look, or the team only have to look at the ones that need a person to kind of add value to then contact that customer to discuss the change and whether it's they still want to do it. And they reckon that they only have to now look at about 20% of the emails that they would have done.
Okay, no, interesting. And I think, for us, what we've seen is the tool set that we've deployed, where we've used we've used the technology to manage email and tickets, and that's the system that the staff use to improve the way in which they're handling emails. We've integrated into contact center systems as well, so we can then deliver into that contact center client, single pane of glass, and we also integrate within back office as well. Yeah. So we're able to take data and actually, automate the update of back office, pulling information, updating back office systems to continue to drive further efficiency in the process. So yeah, that really useful. And look around email. What would you say are the learning points that any specific learning points that have come up working with customers, and any projects around this change with the email handling that we've gone through?
I just said it in some way. Free text, kind of control and remove the opportunity for free text, because that can be a real stumbling block to enable that success, because it inevitably leads to another question, which leads to another question, which leads to another question, and that is that is where the most impact comes, because it's not like a phone call where the majority of the time you resolve it at first phone call, because you can ask that next question, so kind of that is one. So by utilizing rules and reading emails and looking at that journey, you're able to do that. Simple is best. Start as well. Just start, because kind of the human race is fantastic. How I perceive something is very different to how Jonathan or anyone else will perceive it or write it. So I'm massively dyslexic, so my writing will be very, very kind of not necessarily kind of put across in the way that you would want. So kind of it's very hard when you're in it. You always think, oh, tweak here, build here, hang on now. And that stops you actually going live. Some of the best feedback, yes, test it works, test generally that you're getting the right journey in, but inform people. So with the Housing Association, when they change the journey, they inform them. We've changed it to try and improve it for you, we can actually get back to you in a quicker time. And there was a little bit of grumbling for about 3 or 4 days, and then suddenly kind of people were coming back to them within 3 or 4 days. So there was no need to make that change, but that enabled them to actually get the data that they needed to make those continuous improvement tweaks, which has seen the journey they deliver improve week on week.
So I think based on that, it is, we have an important role to play here for the overall success. It's a change in the dynamic of how we work with customers to ongoing to look at customer success, how the technology is delivering value for the business. So it's a closer type of relationship. There's more catch-ups and reviews to make sure that our customers are getting the most out of the technology, and I think we're learning from the data as well. Right?
Absolutely, and for me personally, that's the fun part, because you see the impact. Then you talk to someone 1 month, you make a few changes, you go back and you look at the data, and it's like, that's worked. And then that's how we enabled them to see that it was the internal journey that was causing them problems, rather than the external journey now. And so they've now made that change. You then look at things like, well, actually, all the tools have got open APIs. If you link with the back office system and pop up as an email comes in, that can save you another 30 seconds. So you're now looking at increasing that agent experience, because they've gone through that, they've hit their peak of improvement, and now what we're doing is those little incremental parts, so that they can continue the journey and get most use. So
yeah, and you're
now opening teams.
Yeah, and you're getting more benefit as you go. So
yeah,
really, really interesting. And so the last point I'll pick up on is we've heard a lot today about the growth of digital channels and social media, which is accelerating the change in customer expectations. There's new generations, new demographics coming through, and new ways in which they want to communicate using technology they might have been used to in their personal lives, and expecting it to be delivered when they join a business, go into the workplace, and expect it to be supported by companies that they engage with. What challenge or what challenges do you see this is causing for our customers in being able to support this growing trend?
It's quite often there's a couple of challenges. One is having to use multiple different systems to respond to people. So you get lost in that. Actually, where is that communication? Because you're not bringing that kind of omni-channel experience, because actually it's a siloed experience, depending on whether, if you do have to log into Facebook or go in here, or again, is the marketing look after social media? So it comes in, marketing read it. It's not for marketing. It's a customer contact center thing. So they'll email that in. Someone will answer it and go back. That's not a an experience that people are after. And what that stops doing is that flexibility as well, to look at new channels coming in, because people are feeling overwhelmed by what's already there. So we can now do Instagram. WhatsApp is growing, but has its limitations. And interestingly, in the last couple of weeks, SMS seems to have come slightly back in fashion again. So that's the thing. It's about the diagram I showed earlier, bringing them together. So it's that one point. They're coming in through that one point. So you're then really controlling that journey, because that enables you to continually open channels.
And I think it's an interesting thought, isn't it, when you look at it, that traditionally what's happened is people have added new channels, new teams to manage those channels, different systems to manage those channels and teams, and the unintended consequence of that is a creation of technology and communication silos, right? And if we're talking about creating a culture of learning and understanding the voice of the customer, and wanting to be able to provide a consistent, efficient service irrespective of channel that's used, and recognize the fact that people can move from one channel to another, then actually it's really important to join those together, isn't it?
Vitally important, and otherwise I think you get those of you who are old enough, that poster blindness from the 90s, where wherever you walked, there'd be another poster about something else. It's that something wherever you look, oh, it's another communication here. Well, we've got something else here, and you're not able to have that overarching view of what demographic is using it. Are we using the right tool? Do we need all of these channels open? Because just going and checking your system sporadically takes someone's time, and then if there's nothing there, people forget. It's trying to remove that potential of human error. Not because it's someone's fault that they've done it, but it's just human nature. I don't need to check that anymore, or hang on, I'm really busy, I haven't checked it for 3 days, and you go back and there's something very important there that you need to do. So you need to bring it in to start to be able to work out where you can place it and make sure that you're delivering that agent experience.
So what advice would you give to organizations who are wanting to broaden the channels that they use for communications? Because I can imagine, the more you support, if you don't get it right, the more complexity you put on the customer and the user, and the harder it is to manage. So what advice would you give to organizations who are wanting to broaden their channels? What do you think is a good approach?
Give us a ring.
Good answer.
Well, we're dealing with this, and whether you actually take a product from us or not, it's you can tell by today I love to talk. But it is that there are different scenarios, and it goes back to almost the thread throughout the day is, what is your outcome? Because you can open up a load of channels. Channels don't necessarily mean a reduction in other channels. It means that you might have hit a key demographic that you didn't even think wanted to contact you. So yeah, give us a ring and actually get some outside thought. I think that's an important one, because it's easy when you're in your organization, you're focused and you're tunnel focused on what you're trying to do, and sometimes being able to take that step away to ask yourself the why, look at the need, and then actually challenge organizations like ourselves to look at the how, because we've got access to lots of different tools and are doing it on a day-to-day basis.
No, very, very true. And I think, one thing I'm quite interested in is how we get data, how we get this insights. I know there was in fact, it's a customer that we've both worked with for some time, right? Which is, they were getting a lot of phone calls in, and they were dropping a lot, right? So the phone experience to their customers was not good, and of course, what happens as a result is there's more and more calls that are coming in, and they're stacking up, and then there's emails coming in. Of course, at that point, if you're opening up other channels, you're just magnifying the problem. So they had a lack of, they didn't have enough staff to cope, right? I mean, that's the reality. So by using data from our SIP platform, the portal that we provide, we were able to help them understand different patterns, different behavior, and actually make the case for channel shift and how and where digital could be used to appropriately take some of the load. So I think there's elements in there which is, the more you do it, the more data you get, the more insight you get, the more you can continue to refine and improve. And you talked about getting started. That's key. And have you got some examples maybe where you've worked with some customers that have embraced some of these new channels, and what the experience was for them as a result of doing that?
Yeah, so we work with a university, and because again the disparate workforce and looking at how they could actually cope with potential demand, they wanted to open up a few channels. So not only did we look at supporting that by looking at WhatsApp and web chat and a couple of others, but actually we realised that to put a bot on the back end, not doing anything clever, but what that was doing was collecting that transactional, what's your name, what's your UCAS number, a number of other questions. So again, we were looking at how much time could we save before it actually gets to someone who can now resolve it in a quicker way. And they were unsure and a bit toe in the water, because naturally clearing is a very important aspect for universities. So they held off and then decided to turn on the WhatsApp in the morning. And so not only did they get just about the same amount of calls that they normally get, they got 3,500 extra messages through WhatsApp, because that's what their demographic wants to talk to them in. So they then very quickly were able to fill the places they needed to, and it was a great success. So you've got that side, and then you've got another side, which is working with a travel company. They wanted a way to be able to support those who were overseas, to contact them if they had a problem. And phone calls are very expensive, and so we enabled that kind of WhatsApp aspect, which kind of a note for everyone is more customer led rather than organization led. So you don't get the kind of the hundreds of pizza text messages if you're using WhatsApp. And so what they were able to do again was collect all that detail. So it might be midday in Australia and midnight here. They would get all of those details which meant that the kind of either the night staff, which is very small, or the people working next day could actually action what they wanted to do and respond to that person by the time they woke up, rather than kind of it being I've emailed in or I've done something else in a very kind of message on message. What we're able to do again is that design thinking to see what outcome do they want, what information do they need, and how can we enable that first contact resolution.
Brilliant. So I think the message there is, Gil, we've got a lot of real world experience in doing this, helping customers through it. Lots of different scenarios, lots of different industries, different channels, different technology, integration projects. We're well placed to help, right? And hopefully that's come through to the people that have just sat through that conversation. So, Gil, thanks for your time.
Pleasure.
I'll be wrapping up now. So, let's just
nice.
the slides. Thanks,
Thank
Gil.
you. Cheers.